Welcome everyone to NoDQ&A video right here on NoDQ.com and the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Aaron Rift NoDQ, or go to NoDQ.com/YouTube. What's up everyone? Thank you to all the viewers out there, whether it's live or on demand. This is the official Q&A video series of NoDQ.com. I've been doing these videos and live streams well over a decade now. Been doing the Q&A for quite some time. Been running NoDQ.com 25 plus years. I've seen it all. I've lived through a lot of epic moments and not so epic moments in the world of wrestling. Tonight, I will answer your questions. I have a lot of emails. Super chats are very much appreciated. And if you do super chat, your question goes to the top of the list. It gets priority. Let's get started. Now, at the very end of my stream last week, I received a $5 or £5 super chat from Carl. I'll try to answer this. I'm not sure the wording of this is going to help me or not in properly answering the question, but we'll see. Carl said, if Bloodline can switch members and learn from Evolution mistakes, how long do you give the Bloodline storyline? I think the Bloodline has already learned from whatever mistakes Evolution made. Roman Reigns has been very successful with the Bloodline. He had a highly successful run as champion. Triple H, it was the reign of terror, let's be real. I think WWE has already learned from past mistakes, and as far as how long I give the Bloodline storyline, we could see it go on for at least another year, depending on how the story plays out with The Rock. We have to get The Rock and Roman Reigns at some point. Will it be next year's WrestleMania 41, or will WWE hold off until 42? That is the big question, but I would say at least another year, if not longer. Thank you for that, Carl. Now, Dylan Lasagna sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you, Dylan. Very much appreciated. On the topic of the Bloodline, Dylan said, with the Bloodline Civil War games more likely, what do you think would be the other War Games match for Survivor Series? Is the second one really necessary, to be honest? No, it is not necessary. I am making it very clear, my opinion. They should have the women's match be the traditional Survivor Series match. Have a War Games for the men, have the traditional Survivor Series match for the women. Now, you could always flip it around another year if there's a women's storyline, faction versus faction that's really hot. Swap it. Have the women's match be War Games, have the men's match be the traditional match. But don't act like the traditional match is a downgrade. Survivor Series was built on the traditional 5-on-5 or 4-on-4 matches. I would like to see that because I do think that 2 cage matches is overkill. I would prefer 1 personally. Now, what will be the other match? Probably going to be a women's cage match. Looking at the feuds right now, we could maybe see Sonya Deville's group against Damage Control, some combination of that. Or maybe Rhea Ripley is the captain of one team and Liv Morgan is the captain of another team. I think that that is probably a more likely scenario, and it may still end up involving Sonya's team and Damage Control. They may end up picking sides with Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan. Now, Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat on the topic of Sonya Deville's group. Sonya Deville's group, now known as the Pure Fusion Collective, or PFC. And Psycho Jet Black wants to know my thoughts on this group. I hate the name. I think the group has potential, and the feud with Damage Control has some possibilities, but that is a terrible name. I wonder if the same person that came up with New Catch Republic came up with that name. They're both terrible. Go back to the drawing board. They got to come up with something better than that. Dan F. sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you, Dan, for the super chat. Much appreciated. Dan said, Bloodline 2.0 needs new music and a Titantron. They're still coming out to Solo Sikoa's theme song, and video would make for a better presentation, in my opinion. It depends on if they can come up with a good theme song. I actually like Solo's music. Of all the Def Rebel songs, I think that's one of the better ones. You could have them come out with their own song, but I feel like it elevates Solo more. When the Bloodline came out, they didn't actually have their own song. They came out to Roman Reigns' music. Now, going back to Evolution earlier with Carl, Evolution did have their own theme music. That is true. But I like the idea of the leader of the group being the one to have his music used. With Evolution, it was a little bit different. It was about building up Batista and Orton as Triple H's equals. But with the Bloodline, clearly Roman Reigns is the tribal chief. He is the man in the group, much like Solo is, well, at least on paper, the man in Bloodline 2.0. If they could come up with something good, though, I would not be opposed to the idea. Thank you for that. And now Psycho Jet Black sent in another $2 super chat. Thank you, Psycho. Psycho says, when and where should Roman Reigns versus Jacob Fatu happen? That is a good question, because WWE reportedly is trying to keep Roman Reigns and Jacob Fatu separate. You don't want to have them cross paths too quickly. You don't want Jacob selling for Roman. They're trying to make Jacob strong. Maybe you do Roman Reigns versus Solo first and then have Jacob Fatu versus Roman Reigns, because if you do Jacob first, I almost feel like the fans would rather see Roman Reigns versus Jacob Fatu at this point, and they see Jacob Fatu as more of Roman Reigns' equal than Solo. I feel like there are a lot of fans that think Solo is not worthy of being Roman Reigns' equal. And I partly blame that on WWE for how they booked Solo. After he beat John Cena, he should have been undefeated. Why did they have him lose and go on this lengthy losing streak? It just didn't make sense to me. Maybe Solo and Roman Reigns at Bad Blood, then we get War Games, and then maybe Saudi Arabia, we get Roman Reigns versus Jacob Fatu in a singles match. How about that? I could see that as a possibility. Thank you for that, Psycho Jet Black. I do appreciate the super chats, as always. Building Nexus sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Building Nexus. Says, could the Wyatts go after Karrion Kross for breaking up the New Day? That could be a way to get us to a Final Testament versus Wyatt 6 feud. which I would not mind seeing, although as I've said in other streams, I feel like Karrion Kross as the villainous heel has kind of run its course. But there might be a little bit of mileage with Karrion Kross's Final Testament versus the Wyatt Six. And maybe that's a way you can do it, where the Wyatt Six end up helping out Kofi Kingston, at least. We'll have to see what happens with Xavier Woods. Maybe they're looking out for justice on Monday Night Raw, and the Wyatt Six end up helping Kofi and Odyssey Jones. That is one way to do it. I think that would be an effective way to get to that point. So thank you for that, Building Nexus. Much appreciated. Now, back to Psycho Jet Black, who sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you, Psycho. Much love and appreciation to you. Psycho Jet Black says, best and worst traditional Survivor Series matches of all time. I loved the Ultimate Match of Survival as a kid, 1990 Survivor Series, and I'm sad they never brought it back. I thought it was a cool concept where the winners would come back from their first Survivor Series matches, and then they would have a final match, all the survivors in one final match to determine the ultimate survivors. And another match I liked that I think is very underrated is the wild card match from the 1995 Survivor Series. That was like Ahmed Johnson's first pay-per-view match. I liked it because heels and faces were forced to team together. And of course, you have the shenanigans and they're not getting along and who's going to be able to coexist. But doing it every once in a while, like, it changed things up. I want to see those two types of matches returned. I really liked 2003. Team Austin versus Team Bischoff was one of the better ones. As far as worst Survivor Series matches, I mean, there were a lot of forgettable ones. There was one with Doink, Dink, Pink, whatever, Link going up against Jerry Lawler and his little guys dressed up in the King's outfits, his court jesters, whatever they were called. That one was awful. And then I think there was another one the previous year in 93 where you had Men on a Mission dressed up like Doink. Man, that was a rough time. People that complain about wrestling today, you cannot tell me with a straight face that you think 1993 and 1994 and 95 WWF was better than today. All right, we got one here from Mr. Tito, longtime No DQ contributor. He's taking a little break from writing columns right now, but we love you, Tito. We hope you come back soon. Says, thoughts on WWE Hall of Famer Jesse the Body Ventura endorsing Kamala Harris instead of fellow WWE Hall of Famer Donald Trump for president? I'm just sad that Jesse's not running. He should throw his name in the hat, even if it's a publicity stunt. Even if he's got no chance of winning, probably doesn't want to throw out the money. Can't really blame him, but I'll tell you what, if Jesse Ventura ran as an independent, I'd vote for him. I'll say it straight up. I would vote for him. And I think you need a celebrity to possibly start a movement as far as there potentially being third-party candidates having a real shot at winning a United States presidential election. I just want to see Jesse Ventura or somebody with his celebrity run as an independent. It is what it is. I think in his mind, he sees Kamala Harris as the lesser of two evils. And that's his opinion, and he's sticking to it. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Psycho. Says, will we see tag championship matches on PLEs again? Great question. That is a question to ask Triple H at a press conference, and he'll probably be like, we got a lot of people on the roster, and it's a work in progress, and you just got to be patient, blah, blah, blah. They're limiting the amount of matches on pay-per-views, which is a good thing. It's also a problem because you have so many titles, and it feels like the tag titles are stuck on the SmackDown before the pay-per-view or the Raw before the pay-per-view. The women's titles are even in worse shape. If they do get on a PLE, it's the kickoff show. I almost feel like WWE made a mistake having 2 sets of tag team titles again for the men, because they feel more watered down than ever. At least when there was just the unified titles, the champions felt like a bigger deal. And I always liked the idea of the champions being able to appear on both shows. And it gives you more of an incentive in kayfabe to win the tag titles, because being on more shows, more TV time means more money, right? Makes sense. Thank you for that, Psycho Jet Black. Thank you, Mr. Tito. We got one here. Let's get this super chat from the This Guy Experience. And thank you all for sending in super chats. Very much appreciated. This Guy Experience says, 10 under 35 stars who's WWE future main eventers. Not sure what you mean by that question. 10 under 35 stars who's WWE future main eventers. This Guy Experience, you're going to have to clarify that, because I'm a little lost with what your question is there. So get back to me on that. Somebody let me know as far as a clarification goes, and I will get back to that one. I apologize, This Guy Experience. I really did not understand what you were going with there. Let's see here. We got, oh boy, Jerry sent in a $2 super chat. Psycho Jet Black sent on a $2 super chat. I see what you did there, Jerry. Nicely done. Thank you for the super chat. I don't think that's a question. Jeff Meacham says 10 stars under the age of 35. I guess that's a statement and not a question. WWE has a lot of stars under 30, and the future is looking very bright when you look at Dominic Mysterio and Rhea Ripley. There's so many people that have a good 20 to 30 years ahead of them in WWE. It's definitely an encouraging sign. This Guy Experience says, nah, you're fine. Well, I appreciate the super chat, This Guy. Thank you for that. Let's see. We have Dwayne Atkinson sending in a $5 super chat. Says, who are the heels and faces with Damage Control and PFC, to be honest? Damage Control are reportedly baby faces. That's according to WWE's internal memo. So I think that, clearly Sonya Deville's group are the heels. Damage Control, they've made the turn. And I think it's about time. I think Damage Control is heels. It's played out. When they started in 2022 with Bayley, they were heels. They turned against Bayley. They were heels for a while. I'm fine with the face turn. Hopefully Asuka can come back at some point, and there'll be a babyface team. I think it's the right call. Shayna, Zoe, Sonya, I think they're definitely the heels, and they're better off as the heels at this point. So thank you for that, Dwayne. I appreciate the super chat. Building Nexus sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Building Nexus. I appreciate it. Says, could Solo Sikoa end up getting kicked out of the new Bloodline? Anything's possible at this point. I would not rule it out. I don't think it's going to happen in the near future. I think that he'll be around at least through Survivor Series, but you have to wonder, with The Rock, is The Rock going to be disappointed with Solo and blaming Solo for not getting the job done in his absence? And The Rock takes over as the leader and Solo Sikoa's out. You never know, but I feel like they put so much stock into Solo now versus Roman that you definitely cannot rush it. Going back to that earlier question, how long will the Bloodline continue? Certainly has some more stories to tell, and Solo being kicked out could very well be one of them. Shout out to Psycho Jet Black, who sent in a $2 super chat. Jerry Manley sent a $2 super chat. That he did. Thank you for pointing that out, Psycho Jet Black. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Says, who would you rather meet, Taylor Swift or Ryback? Man, that's such a tough question. Ryback is the talk of the town. He is He's the big celebrity. He's the big guy. But at the end of the day, Taylor Swift is easier on the eyes, so I'm going to go with Taylor Swift. But, man, how could I resist Ryback? Look at the guy. He is 300 pounds of twisted steel and sex appeal, apparently. Matthew, shout out to Matthew, sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Matthew. Says, is The Undertaker's debut one of the greatest Survivor Series moments? Absolutely up there as one of the greatest. As far as WWE debuts go, he's got to be top 10, maybe even top 5. And Survivor Series moments, I mean, it's one of the best, if not the best, Survivor Series debuts. And there have been some good ones over the years. Undertaker's debut has to be maybe top 5 for me as far as just pure moments go. Like, it's always something that they show in the video packages. You know, it's always something that we associate with Survivor Series. And they even had his career have its end at Survivor Series all those years later. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Dwayne Atkinson sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Dwayne. I appreciate it. Dwayne says, could Kevin Sullivan been a better leader of the Ministry of Darkness than The Undertaker if he was in WWE? Probably not, because as entertaining as Kevin Sullivan was, he was in that mid-card level. He never really had the star power of The Undertaker. Now, could have he been a good manager in WWE, representing some kind of evil faction during the Attitude Era? Yeah, I think he would have done a great job if he had made the jump to WWE, but he was very much involved in WCW, not just as a talent, but also as a booker, working behind the scenes. He was a WCW guy. It's one of those what ifs. I don't think he would have been a better leader than The Undertaker, but if Kevin Sullivan had gone to WWE, I think he would have done well. Thank you for that, Dwayne. Much appreciated. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat, says, better group, Pure Fusion Collective or Aces and Eights? Pure Fusion Collective. The name is terrible. If anything, I would say Aces and Eights is a better name, but Aces and Eights among the worst factions in wrestling history. Yes, I said it, and I'm not taking it back. They sucked, and they were one of many reasons why Impact Wrestling completely went down the shitter and just had a complete free fall. Thank you for that, Psycho Jet Black. Mr. Tito sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you, Tito. Says, do you miss bra and panty matches in WWE? I haven't really missed bra and panty matches. I enjoyed them when I was 16, 17. To me, it's skippable. You know, if you want to see that kind of stuff, you can go on the internet and probably find something more explicit. I don't miss them. I enjoy the women's division as it is now. Now, if they wanted to bring back one as like a one-off, you could, if there was the right story behind it. But, you know, they did tuxedo matches back in the day with the men. They haven't done that in a long time. I don't really know how many people actually want to see either of those matches. I'm sure there are men that want to see the bra and panties matches, but not sure how many people want to see the tuxedo matches. I don't recall those ever being too much of a hit. I mean, you did have like Howard Finkel in those matches, but still, even if you put Randy Orton, imagine that, Randy Orton versus John Cena in a tuxedo match. Yeah, I mean, when you think of that idea and you laugh at it, I mean, that's pretty much how a bra and panties match is for the women. So I don't think it's going to happen. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Psycho Jet Black. I appreciate it. Psycho says, what are the funniest promos in wrestling history? That's a good question, because there have been a lot of bad promos over the years, and there have been some hilarious ones. R-Truth may be the funniest wrestler in the history of WWE. I think of R-Truth with Brock Lesnar when R-Truth was talking about eliminating Paul Heyman from the Royal Rumble. And then when Paul Heyman had to make it clear that Brock is the one entering and not Paul, R-Truth is like, my bad, I now undeclare myself for the Royal Rumble. I mean, that has got to be right up there as far as my favorite promos as far as comedy goes. R-Truth was just fantastic. And I enjoyed the DX parodies. I know they were not politically correct, and they don't go over too well in today's era. But at the time, I was very entertained by the DX parodies, and I legitimately found them funny. And I was eager to see the next match between those guys. It made me invested in the storylines. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Psycho. I appreciate it. Says, better overall superstar, Sid or Lex Luger? I think Lex Luger was a more consistent superstar. He was the total package, although not the best wrestler. Both of them had something in common, and that I think that they were not great wrestlers, but when they were in there with great wrestlers, they were able to put on solid performances. Sid was an awesome character. I loved Sid, but when it was softball season, he was nowhere to be found. And I felt like he bounced around from company to company too often and did not have the consistency of Lex Luger. So I would have to go with Lex Luger overall as far as just being around more often and having those key moments like when Luger beat Hollywood Hogan in the Palace of Auburn Hills in 1997 for the title. Sid had his moment, though, beating Shawn Michaels. They both had similar careers, too, as far as I'm concerned, as far as their level of success and how far they got. Thank you for that, Psycho. And Mr. Tito sent in a $2 super chat, says, when are you going to post my YouTube video? To quote R-Truth, my bad. I thought I posted it, but I'll have to go back and check. I think Mr. Tito sent me a video to post, and I was on a trip, so I wasn't able to post it because of whatever reason I had at the time, and it just never got posted. So my apologies to Mr. Tito. The This Guy Experience sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. What did you think of Kurt Angle as SmackDown GM back in the 00s, which I believe was 2004 when he was the general manager? It was okay. Angle was hurt, so they needed something for him to do. They put him in the GM role. I think he did a better job when he came back in 2016, 2017. The 2004 era, you wanted to see Kurt Angle wrestle. And I remember, I think he got choke slammed off a platform by the Big Show and was basically killed, but then he ended up coming back and wrestling again. It was okay, but I really did not care for that era of SmackDown too much. So I kind of associate Kurt Angle as SmackDown general manager in 2004 to that really bad era of WWE when you had Mordecai and Kenzo Suzuki. I mean, they had a rough undercard, and then you had JBL as the champion. Yeah. Thank you for that. I appreciate it, This Guy Experience. And yes, TJS misses bra and panties matches. All right, let's get to some email questions. Jeremiah Dorset says, hey, Aaron, in your opinion, where do you rank the Bloodline storyline overall and faction-wise in every era of WWE history? It's up there. The Bloodline, when you consider the success it's had, it's got to be one of the top factions of all time. You can argue DX. If we're talking WWE groups, DX might be number one. But Bloodline, I think you could argue number 2 above Evolution. I would probably put Bloodline ahead of Evolution at this point. And then you have some of the other great factions like the Shield. The Shield's definitely up there, but really when you look at it, the Shield did not have a very long run. They had what, about a year and a half? Granted, they were very dominant, and you look at the 3 stars that came out of that. But yeah, I would at the least put Bloodline number 2. And for overall storyline, as far as faction storylines, I feel like the Bloodline might in fact be number 1 as far as storylines go. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat, says your favorite and funniest no DQ review moments. Favorite moment would have to be when we did 100 and 200, because of the fact that we had so many people on, and when we got Mr. Tito on and everybody's arguing and things are getting really heated. Whenever Virtue goes off and starts calling people marks, that's when I'm really enjoying the review, when everybody can just have a good time. When TJS gets a case of the giggles is definitely a favorite no DQ review moment. That's why we got to have TJS on every week, because when he's on, you know, Virtue just has to go like that, like he's the Pillsbury Doughboy, and we're all laughing, we're all having a good time. Those are my favorite moments. All right, back to the email questions. Dylan Folk, and this is the thumbnail and the main topic I wanted to cover here tonight. Dylan says, hey, Aaron, how would you book John Cena's 2025 farewell tour? As in, who would you have him face all through the year? Here's what I think is going to happen. John Cena, obviously going for that 17th world title. He's never been Intercontinental Champion. That's another goal for him. Those are 2 things he has to accomplish. Win the IC title. Braun Breaker's the champion now. I think maybe John Cena wins the title from Braun Breaker at some point. I mean, if Braun Breaker is going to lose the title, I don't think there's any shame in losing to John Cena. And I think they should build up to it. IC title first, then have Cena go for that final goal, winning the 17th world title. He's got to have a match with Randy Orton at some point. Maybe Cody Rhodes. I would love to see John Cena versus Cody Rhodes, and that could potentially be John Cena's final match. John Cena versus Cody. Will it be next year's SummerSlam? Who knows? Maybe they do Randy Orton at WrestleMania. Maybe they do Braun Breaker at Royal Rumble, or John Cena enters the Royal Rumble. That's a possibility too. You definitely have to have those 3 matches, and John Cena going for both the IC title and the world title. Hey, if they can find a good reason to do it, or maybe they don't need a good reason to do it, but John Cena versus CM Punk one more time before it's all over. Shanti is cooler than you sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Shanti. I appreciate it. Shanti says, aloha from Hawaii. Have you seen Damian Priest 24 on Peacock? It was really good. Also, are you still playing the AEW video game? I have not played the AEW video game in a year. I played it for a couple months, and it did not have much replay value, I must say. As far as Damian Priest in 24, I did watch it. It was excellent. Very good documentary. Really makes you like Damian Priest. You have to admire how hard he worked and getting himself in shape and his whole journey. He legitimately seems like one of the nicest guys in the business. I'm very happy for his success. He's earned it. And I highly recommend the documentary if you did not see it. I mean, it was a perfect vehicle to get the fans sympathetic towards him. Perfect timing with this babyface turn that he recently made on WWE television. All right, so I wanted to mention this because this is a breaking story, and Dwayne Atkinson said, just heard Afa, the Wild Samoan, has died. Rest in peace. Now, I was just on Samu's Facebook before I went live here, and Samu said he's actually still alive. People are jumping the gun here, I believe. Last time I checked, about 40 minutes ago, right before I came on, that Afa was still alive. But yeah, apparently he's in very rough shape. So really sad to hear that with Afa. And we just lost Sikoa of the Wild Samoans. I mean, very, very awful. Great tag team back in their day. So yeah, that's all I know at this point. My thoughts, my sympathies with the family. Building Nexus sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Building Nexus. How would you book a Kross face turn? That's a solid question. How do you get to the Karrion Kross face turn? We've seen people getting kicked out of their group. It's been a bit overdone. You could have AOP turn against Karrion Kross, but we've seen the Judgment Day split up. We could potentially see the New Day split up. Maybe one way they could go at it is Karrion Kross leaves the group and turns face that way, rather than being betrayed. We've seen too many betrayals. Bayley got betrayed, as I mentioned, Judgment Day. So if Karrion Kross was to turn face, I would have him do something heroic and break away from the group on his own. Maybe come to the save. AOP is beating down a guy, and Karrion Kross says, you know what, this is too much. And then he attacks him. And he decides to turn a new leaf. But I think it should be done. I'm over Karrion Kross as a heel. Shout out to Mr. Tito, who sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you, Tito. Tito says, predictions for how Paul Heyman returns. I thought he was going to return with Roman Reigns at SummerSlam. It did not happen. Paul Heyman was backstage, though. I did see a picture. I would like to see him be part of the group with Roman Reigns, but maybe they don't want to do that at this point. Maybe they feel like it would be a distraction from what's going on in the storyline. I'm a little disappointed we didn't get Armando Estrada as the mouthpiece for the Bloodline 2.0. Maybe that can happen. Maybe Armando Estrada comes in, and then that's when Paul Heyman comes back. Or maybe maybe Roman Reigns gets beat down and Paul Heyman introduces the returning Jimmy Uso. I mean, that's how you can bring Jimmy Uso back, have Paul Heyman show up and make the introduction. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Psycho. Says, Swerve, have Karrion Kross join the New Day. That's a good one, Psycho Jet Black. I'll give you that. Karrion Kross in the New Day. I mean, they might as well make him the new Doink the Clown if they're going to do that. Highly unlikely in all likelihood. I know you're joking with that one, but why would you even put that in the universe? What is wrong with you, Psycho Jet Black? Go back to sending in comments about Bart Gunn. We haven't had enough Bart Gunn discussion here on the NoDQ YouTube channel. All right, let's get to Ed Williams, who sent in this comment. Ed Williams said, what is the trajectory of Daniel Garcia if he stays in AEW? That's a solid question. I have not been the biggest Daniel Garcia fan. He's a talented guy, but charisma-wise, I think that there's a ceiling with Daniel Garcia. I don't have this vision of him being a world champion. He could perhaps be a TNT champion, be a solid mid-carder, but I kind of see Daniel Garcia like Lance Storm. He's a skilled technician, solid in the ring, lacking in the charisma department, needs a dancing gimmick. Same thing with Lance Storm. They gave him a dancing gimmick. Lance Storm wrestled for the world title, but was never going to be that guy. That's how I see Daniel Garcia. I see him as a solid mid-carder, and my gut feeling is he'll stay in AEW because I feel like he would really struggle in WWE when there's so many colorful characters. I just don't think he would stand out in WWE. I think he's better off in AEW and has a better chance of being in more high-profile matches. All right, Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat, says, would you rather meet Bart Gunn or Donald Trump? I'd rather meet Bart Gunn at this point. I mean, Bart Gunn fought Butterbean at WrestleMania. That's a classic. Although Donald Trump was also at WrestleMania, Battle of the Billionaires. They each have their own WrestleMania story. But yeah, I think I would rather meet Bart Gunn than Donald Trump at this point. And yes, Ian, I got your questions, and I'm going to get to one of them here in just a second. Sun Goshuaku, by the way, plug for him. I'm going to be on his YouTube channel next Thursday. I think it's going to be an afternoon stream. We'll be talking about Bloodline and ranking each year the Bloodline. So stay tuned for that. I'll plug it on the NoDQ social media account. So look out for that. And next Thursday, we're also doing predictions right here in this time slot, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Predictions for AEW All In. So Sun said, before the 2020s decade is over, do you see Bianca Belair versus Rhea Ripley as the next female WrestleMania main event? If not, looking at the current landscape of female talents, which women's match could you see being the third WrestleMania female main event? And does it still happen between 2030? It depends on Jade Cargill. Rhea Ripley is the biggest female star in wrestling right now. I think it's pretty obvious. Becky Lynch is gone for the time being. We did see Becky versus Rhea Ripley already. If Jade Cargill can reach that next level, Rhea Ripley versus Jade Cargill might have that potential. Bianca Belair, I feel like her stock has dropped a little bit. I don't know if she needs a character change or what, but her stock has dropped. Maybe when Charlotte Flair returns, they could revisit Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte. But right now, I'm looking at Rhea Ripley, and I don't know who the other person is who could possibly be in that main event spot. Could they potentially bring back Ronda Rousey for one more run? It's possible. I feel like the odds are against it. But yeah, it just depends on who can reach that next level of stardom. And I don't really see anybody on the horizon that's going to be at Rhea Ripley's level. But if somebody can get close to Rhea Ripley, then I think there is a possibility of it happening sometime within the next 6 years, as you mentioned. All right, now to one of Ian's questions. Ian's been waiting. He's been patient. Ian says, why have both men's tag team titles only been defended on TV? I know the BPLEs have less matches, but I feel like titles like the men's tag team titles need to be on more PLEs than just content for TV. And I did touch upon this earlier on. It's tough because WWE is booking fewer matches on premium live events. And for whatever reason, they have not put on the men's title matches. I would have liked to have seen DIY versus the Bloodline at SummerSlam. Would have been cool to see Johnny Gargano defending his title in a stadium full of fans. You know, it's just going to come down to timing. I think that if the right storyline in the right city comes along, then we'll see the tag team titles defended. But again, as I mentioned earlier, I feel like both sets of titles have been watered down, and they had a better shot of being on the PLEs when there was just one set of tag team titles. Shout out to Jesse, and I'm not sure this currency form, but thank you for the super chat. Sent in a 50-something. Thank you, Jesse. Says, do you think Xavier Woods will double cross Kofi and Karrion Kross? I will believe it when I see it. As far as Xavier Woods turning on anybody, New Day, all of them have been very vocal that they want to stay as a unit. They don't want to break up. They want to be the one faction that never breaks up. So I would not bet money on it happening, but as I mentioned on my Raw recap, I like to believe that there's a little bit of hope based off of how blatant Xavier's disapproval is of Odyssey Jones. I want to say there's a chance. As Lloyd Christmas would say, so you're saying there's a chance. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. Back to the emails. TJS sent in this email question. TJS says, we have no access to AEW's financial data or in the mind of Tony Khan, but based on what you've seen, do you believe CM Punk when he speculated that Tony Khan doesn't care about drawing money and making a profit, but is fine with putting money into the company and ensuring that everyone has fun? I think Tony Khan does care to a degree about making money. You would obviously rather have a profitable company than a money-losing company. And I think he might be conflicted because he's always looking to produce the best fan-friendly pro wrestling show on the planet, AEW, where the best wrestle. And, you know, sometimes he's got to decide, does he want to make money or does he want the fans to be happy? And if the fans are happy, yes, you are making money, but is it enough to cover all the expenses? AEW runs weekly television. Guess what? That's expensive. Live TV is very expensive. If AEW gets a nice renewal for their media rights, they're going to be fine. They're going to be making money. They might not be close to WWE's level as far as drawing in mainstream fans, but they'll be profitable. And I think Tony does care because we have seen AEW cut costs on some things. Like it has been noticeable on TV. You don't see quite as much pyro as you used to. And there's just little things production-wise. They did end up releasing some people after Tony Khan was saying he was never going to do it. So I do think they're looking out at the budget. Bryan Danielson doesn't use the final countdown. I mean, think of it this way. If Tony Khan was like, I got a checkbook that's endless, he would have the final countdown for Bryan Danielson every appearance. They're very selective about when they use it. So they are looking out money-wise. They're not going absolutely crazy. So thank you for that, TJS. Dwayne Atkinson sent in this email question. I already answered this. He super chatted it. So thank you, Dwayne. And then Matt sent in this email question. Hello, Aaron. What did you think about the time Andre the Giant, or not Andre the Giant, the Giant, a.k.a. Paul White, joined the NWO? And do you think that he was kicked out of the group too soon? Have a great late summer with your family and friends. I thought the Giant turning was a little strange when it happened because the NWO was former WWE guys, but they played it up like they're getting the WCW guys to join them now. That's how powerful the NWO is. So it actually did work having somebody who was a WCW guy betray the company because, hey, he sees the NWO as the future. And as far as kicking out the Giant goes, it was rushed. They were moving pretty quickly. They were adding all these new people to the NWO, and it ended up working out for the Giant. When he turned babyface, he was really over. Now, the problem, the bad booking was not being kicked out. The bad booking was when the Giant rejoined the NWO in 98. That felt like a very cheap ratings ploy, and there was no good logical reason. I think they tried to say, well, the Giant hates Kevin Nash. That's why he joined up with Hulk Hogan after, over a year of feuding with Hogan and the NWO. It just didn't make sense. It was dumb. And that was really the beginning of the end for the Giant. He kind of lost his way in WCW, and by early 99, he was out the door, went over to WWE. Got a $5 super chat here from Dylan Lasagna. Love the username. Thank you, Dylan. Dylan says, with the news of AEW All In Texas, do you think Wembley Stadium will host SummerSlam next year? If not, where do you think SummerSlam will or should be at? I don't see Wembley Stadium being the host for a WWE event for anything other than WrestleMania. I don't see it being SummerSlam. I think if WWE is going to Wembley Stadium, it is going to be WrestleMania in London. You're gonna go with the biggest show possible, break the record. Now, what's funny is I think if WWE ran SummerSlam at Wembley Stadium, they'd probably break AEW's number for just SummerSlam. I don't even think they need WrestleMania to pull that off. But my gut feeling is WrestleMania in London is what's going to happen. As far as other potential locations for SummerSlam, I haven't heard anything at this point. I think it's going to come down to bidding and which city is willing to spend the most money on WWE. I really don't know. I mean, to me, that could be any major city in the country. Not going to be Indianapolis because Indianapolis has the Royal Rumble, and they're not going to come back with SummerSlam. But WWE has that deal with Minnesota. Actually, which one is SummerSlam 2026? Was that Minneapolis? No, that was Minnesota. That was Minnesota, because Minnesota is getting SummerSlam since they didn't get WrestleMania. Yeah, SummerSlam Minnesota 2026. Indianapolis might end up being 27 or 28. I know they're getting WrestleMania too, and they have this long-term deal with WWE. But yeah, I really don't know. I haven't heard anything about any favorites for a city at this point. All right, we got another email question here from Ian. Getting to Ian's questions now. Ian says, what are the best and worst Piper's Pit segments in WWE history? Best one, I mean, everybody that watched it back in the day remembers when he hit Jimmy Snuka with the coconut. That was a great one. He had some good ones with Lou Albano and Hulk Hogan in the early 80s. And as far as more recent ones go, I mean, I think the all-time best one was with Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, when Andre turned on Hogan, ripped off the crucifix to set up WrestleMania 3. I mean, that would be my number one. More recently, I like the WrestleMania one with Roddy Piper and Steve Austin in the ring together. Worst one, WrestleMania 5. What was his name? Morton Downey Jr. What an awful segment that was. I mean, that was death. Granted, the crowd did not care about it whatsoever, but it was rough out there. Piper with the fire extinguisher. Yeah, that might have been the first one, or the worst one as far as I'm concerned. So thank you for that, Ian. I appreciate it. Got one here from Calvin Bowman. Thank you, Calvin. Says, what did you think of Chavo Guerrero? I think he and Eddie were a good tag team in WWE. It was a mistake to break them up. What do you think? They could have had more mileage. Los Guerreros were very entertaining, but Eddie's star was just rising so much. As I like to say, strike the iron when it's hot. They saw momentum with Eddie Guerrero, and they broke them up. Yeah, it would have been nice to see them as a team for a little bit longer. Unfortunately, we never got to really see a reunion of them. Maybe if Eddie had lived, they would have reunited at some point. But Eddie was just rising up the ranks. His stock was going up, and WWE decided to go with it. When he was getting hot, they broke up the team, and Eddie went into the world title picture. I think that was the right call. You know, it was the right timing for Eddie Guerrero. It's just a shame that the team didn't have more longevity, but, you know, that was just the way it was. I don't think it was a mistake by any means, though. I think it was the right business decision. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you, Psycho. Says, best and worst pay-per-view and PLE opening matches. Well, worst ones, the first match that comes to my mind is Randy Orton versus Bray Wyatt, The Fiend, from night one of WrestleMania 37. It just stands out like, this is such a terrible way to start off the show. But there were a lot. I mean, I could not name too many off the top of my head because I try to forget the worst ones. Best ones, I always go back to Rey Mysterio versus Kurt Angle from SummerSlam 2002. That's the first one that comes to mind. It just really set the tone for the entire evening. And WrestleMania 30, Daniel Bryan versus Triple H. I mean, that was a fantastic opening. And then 20 years earlier, you had Bret Hart versus Owen Hart at WrestleMania 10, which was among my favorites. Excellent way to kick off WrestleMania. And just having the whole circle. That was what was great about 10 and 30. It was basically, you know, one storyline, and then you went full circle from start to finish. It was great stuff for both of those shows. Ian, Seth Rollins and Randy Orton was not the first match of that WrestleMania. That was the ladder match, I believe. Could be wrong, though. I was there, right? I believe Randy Orton and Seth Rollins was second, but somebody correct me if I'm wrong on that one. I should know because I was there, right? Getting old, though. All right, we got another one here from Ed Williams. Thank you, Ed. Ed says, how well has the Mariah May and Toni Storm feud been handled? It's been one of the better AEW storylines in the history of the company. And I think that they have real potential to be the best match in the history of AEW's women's division. Could be one of the best matches in the history of the company, depending on how they work, how the crowd reacts to them, what the finish is of the match. But I think they're going to tear the house down, and I think they have a real shot of having the best women's match in the history of the company, and they're on one of the biggest stages in the history of AEW. And yeah, the storyline's been very good. Love the angle with the shoe and the blood. The turn was really well done. And yeah, when I look at the card, as far as which matches I'm most excited about, I mean, that's probably 2 or 3. It's definitely towards the top. All right, we got one more here from Ian. What are your thoughts on the slap heard round the world by David Schultz to John Stossel? I feel it's a shame that David Schultz never got to reach his full potential. He could work, talk on the mic, and had the size that Vince loved in his wrestlers. David Schultz was Steve Austin before Steve Austin, and I'm talking about Stone Cold. David Schultz had that angry redneck vibe to him. I love that TNT segment where he has the gun and he shoots it up in the air and Vince McMahon is just losing his mind. David Schultz could have been a major star for several years, but yeah, unfortunately he was the scapegoat before Jack Perry was. He was trying to protect the business. John Stossel said, I think this is fake. And of course, David Schultz, trying to protect the business, slapped the guy as hard as he could. Not once, but twice. And WWE got in a lot of legal trouble. It was It was very bad for the company, and this was right around the time that WWE was gearing up for WrestleMania, and Vince had to get rid of the guy. It just really sucks that it went down the way it did. And David Schultz should definitely be recognized for being ahead of his time. I think he was Attitude before there was an Attitude Era, and I don't know if there would be a Stone Cold Steve Austin without Dave Schultz. Dave the Redneck Schultz. I love that promo too. Look it up on YouTube. David Schultz, Hulk Hogan, San Francisco, AWA. Type in those keywords, you'll find it. But he cuts a promo on Hulk Hogan, and Mean Gene Okerlund just cracks up laughing. All-time great promo. I love that one so much. All right, we got one more here from TJS. If you could retroactively experience one match and moment from the front row of any wrestling event, what would it be? I would have to go with Hell in a Cell. Mick Foley, Mankind, and The Undertaker, because that was a once-in-a-lifetime stunt. I don't think anybody's done anything that crazy before or after, even in AEW. It is an iconic moment in wrestling history. Another one might be Hulk Hogan body slamming Andre the Giant, but as far as just pure, oh my God, I can't believe I just saw that. Yeah, I would go with Undertaker throwing Mankind off the top of the Hell in a Cell. Being in the front row for that, imagine that. Just absolutely insane. And I say this because I saw Elix Skipper jumping off that cage, doing the tightrope walk on the top of that 6 sides of steel at AEW Turning Point in 2004. I was there at the Impact Zone for that. That was the only Orlando TNA show I ever went to. And that was one of the craziest things I ever saw at a wrestling show. So imagine that Mankind moment being thrown off the cell. That would be my pick if I could only do one. Anyways, guys, I'm going to wrap things up at this point. We're over the hour. I still have a lot of questions. So I really do thank everybody for their super chats and their questions. I'm going to come back with more. I'm not sure when the next one will be because we got predictions coming up next Thursday night. And then the Thursday after that, we'll be doing predictions for Bash in Berlin. There's a lot of stuff coming up for the rest of the month, but if I did not get to your question tonight, rest assured I will be holding on to your questions and they will be utilized on a future episode of No DQ&A video. So thank you all again. I really do appreciate it. Much love to everyone out there. Stay tuned to NoDQ.com for all the latest wrestling news and rumors. Have a great rest of your evening. Stay safe out there. Say yes to NoDQ.com, and I will see you all next time.